People often say you can learn a language without learning the culture. Technically that's true, but only in a very shallow level. If your goal is real fluency, the kind that lets you understand people's intentions, emotional tone, and social meaning, then language and culture are inseparable. And the reverse is also true. You can't fully understand a culture without knowing its language at a corresponding level, because many words and concepts are culturally bound. They don't translate cleanly. Language learning has levels. Culture appears at the upper levels. At beginner levels, language is mostly functional, such as ordering food, asking directions, and basic conversation in general. But as you move to higher levels, words stop being just words. They start carrying assumptions, social expectations, and cultural logic. This is why textbooks can take you to correct sentences, but they can't fully teach you what those sentences do socially. Looking at this from a research perspective, meaning isn't only in words. One useful framework is anthropologist Edward T. Hall's idea of high context versus low context communication. Okay, let me explain that. In high context cultures, much of the meaning is carried by shared assumptions and the situation rather than being said explicitly. This is like twins talking, people who know each other well. That's exactly why in some languages the most important meaning is often in the implication, the softening, the pause, or what is not said. Let's take a look at Japanese, for example. What is said versus what is meant. Japanese is one of the clearest examples of this, and I've used it many times in my years lecturing about cross-cultural management. In Japanese, what is said and what is meant are often not the same thing, especially for refusals, disagreement, or delivering negative information. To understand why, you need 4 key concepts that work together as a system in Japanese language and culture. You have tatemae, honne, uchi, and soto. Tatemae is a socially appropriate facade or front. What you say to maintain harmony and keep relationships smooth. Honne, on the other hand, is your true feeling or genuine opinion. Now, an important point is, tatemae is not just simply lying, like we say white lie in English. It's often a culturally skilled way of protecting relationships and avoiding unnecessary friction. That brings us to uchi and soto. These are social boundaries, and this is where it becomes systematic. Uchi means inside, your in-group, family, close friends, your team, your company. Soto means outside, people not in your group, strangers, customers, outsiders, other organizations. Japanese communication changes depending on whether the listener is uchi or soto, and that affects how directly honne, or what you're actually thinking, can appear. So, how do they work together? Here's the key insight. Tatemae is primarily for soto, those people who belong to that classification of being outsiders. Honne is mostly reserved for uchi, the insiders. So a person may sound vague in public, but very clear in private. not because they are inconsistent, but because they are navigating social boundaries. Let's take a look at a concrete example, a polite refusal. In Japanese, people might say, ちょっと難しいですね. The literal meaning is, it's a little difficult, isn't it? Often the intended meaning is, no, that's not possible. Later, within Uchi, the insider, the same speaker might say, 正直に言うと無理です. Honestly speaking, or directly speaking, frankly speaking, it's impossible. So this is the same opinion being expressed in a different way to a different audience, different cultural logic. From a research standpoint, we're talking about face or reputation and politeness. Sociologist Irving Goffman described face as a positive social value a person claims in interaction with another or others. And much of a conversation is about protecting face. Building on this, Brown and Levinson's politeness theory explains how speakers often soften potentially face-threatening acts, such as refusal or disagreement, using politeness strategies rather than blunt directness, as in the example I just showed you in Japanese. In other words, refusals aren't just information, they're social actions, and every culture has different rules for dealing with them. So why does this sometimes confuse language learners? Many learners hear Japanese indirectness and think they're not being honest. But that's a cultural misunderstanding, a cultural judgment. The goal is not to express personal truth at all costs, but to manage relationships, preserve harmony, and keep the social space comfortable, especially with people in the Soto or outside group. If you don't understand Uchi Soto, you will miss who the message is really for, even if your grammar in Japanese is perfect. So this comes through interaction. This isn't something you learn from vocabulary lists. You learn it by interacting with native speakers in natural environments and noticing patterns such as linguistic softeners. It can even be body language, hesitation, unfinished sentences, the rhythm of politeness, and the meaning that lives between the lines. You've heard of the phrase, read between the lines. That's very important in Japanese communication. That's when language learning becomes cultural fluency. Let's think about how language shapes habitual attention. There's also a research tradition in cognitive science, often called linguistic relativity, not the strong claim that language traps thought, but the weaker and more evidence-based idea that language can shape habitual attention and patterns of thinking. So at advanced levels, language isn't just a code for translating ideas. It's a way of learning how a culture organizes meaning, relationships, and social reality. So as you study foreign languages, you see how important it is to pay attention to the cultural nuances in communication. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next video. If you would like to know more about my experience over the past 5 decades, learning and using more than 30 languages around the globe, with adventures in 101 countries so far, then please visit my website, polyglotdreams.com. There you will find my memoir, A Life in 30 Languages, translated in various languages and integrated with audio and dual readers to offer a great way to improve your target languages.